Professor.
Yes, hi.
Professor Dan Franks.
Hi.
What are your qualifications?
So I have an undergraduate in computer science. I have a PhD in computer science, but it was actually interdisciplinary, so partly biology as well. And this is a theme running through everything I always do. I'm a professor of biology and computer science.
Wow. Okay. So loads to unpack there, because biology and computer science, obviously we're thinking about, humans interacting with computers and AI now as well. Yeah. And I know it's something you're massively into at the moment as well, maybe not for the reasons that people might think, but just tell us a little bit about the business that you've kind of built coming out of being a professor. So you are a professor part-time, but you've built a business called Causa.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so I've been a professor for almost 20 years now, but I kind of...
You don't look old enough.
Very kind
you
of
genuinely do. It's very deceiving.
Must be my daily moisturizing routine or something. But yeah, so I had a hankering to move into business, and this was right after COVID, and there was a lot of hybrid working, and so I actually moved to work at a business in London, which was a unicorn startup. It was a tech company, and I worked there on kind of machine learning, simulation for a while, and I thought that was great. And I realized at the time that there were some major problems in industry, though, that people didn't realize, and this was that they needed to make data-driven decisions. Everyone's wanting to make them because of massive advantages of it. But a lot of them were using incorrect methods. So things like using predictive methods, predictive analytics, which is for forecasting, not for decision-making. And there are good reasons for that. Or things like large language models, which again are predictive and not for decision-making. And there's other reasons for that we can get into as well. So what we wanted to do was create a platform that makes it easy to use something called causal machine learning. Causal machine learning is basically something that can attribute. This is a cause of that, and here's how you can optimize it to change an outcome.
That's really interesting, because I think that's not something people think about. They just look at these models, they look at these tools, ChatGPT, Grok, whatever, and they go, oh, there's the answer. It's right there. But how it gets to that answer is completely unknown, right? We don't know. We don't know the algorithm. We don't know the what do they call it? Like, we don't know the nodes that are firing. We don't know what's what. But you've unpacked this a little bit.
Yeah, so I can talk about it in a less kind of fine scale technical way. So we don't know exactly what it's doing at kind of the fine scale level, but what we know is kind of how it's trained. We know kind of in a way what it's doing, how it's arriving at what it's arriving at. And I can give some examples of this in a thought experiment. So for example, with large language models, the way that they're trained in two steps, but the main step is that they're trained to predict, it's called tokens, which is just either kind of words or sets of words from previous ones. So it's predictive, it's forecasting what the next words should be, given the previous words, maybe your question, its previous answer, things like this. And so it pattern matches, basically. It looks at what are the words previously and what is in all of the text that it's been trained on, and it's been trained on lots of books they've scanned, the internet, lots of Reddit and so on. It thinks like what is the most likely next word and words given that text, right? So what it means is it's not really understanding what's going on, right? It's just predicting. And so, sometimes it means it will get it right because it's been trained so much it can generalize. It's probably seen a similar question before and things like that. But to show that it's not kind of understanding really and is just predicting, there are examples like what they really struggle with is if you give it some kind of like typical puzzle that people give it and you vary the puzzle, it often gets it wrong. So one example that they've actually patched now, but did work, was you can say, there's a man at the side of a river. He has a fox, a chicken, and a boat. How can the man get across? And of course, the answer it gives is, well, first he takes the fox across, blah, blah, blah. And the answer is just he should get in the boat and go across, right? But what it does is it pattern matches, and it sees in its training data, normally the answer is that he does this certain order. One that works now still is to say a man and his son are in a car accident. They go to the hospital. The surgeon, who is the son's father, says, I cannot operate on him, he's my son. And if you ask it, who is the surgeon to the son? Well, of course, the answer is the father. I already said that in the question. It will say it's the mother. And the reason is it does not understand what you're saying, even though I gave it the answer. You can try this one now. And the reason is, in the training data, the patterns of that normally match something where the answer is mother. It's actually a cognitive bias, a gender bias kind of puzzle that often people use to demonstrate cognitive bias, where the actual one goes, well, the father and the son are in a car, the father dies, the son goes to the hospital, and the surgeon says, I cannot operate on him, he's my son. What is a surgeon? And some people will say, I don't know. And that's showing a cognitive bias because it's the mother. But it doesn't understand the question. It clearly doesn't understand anything. It's just trying to predict. And that is a sensible thing to predict.
But that's how it is now.
Yeah.
Where's it going in the future though? Because I'm not going to lie, it's impressive what it does. Yeah. Like, we've never had technology like this. Well, not mass technology like this that I can remember, and ever reading about, really. If it's this bad now, though, surely it can only get better. Like, what's the roadmap for this? Like, in your opinion, like where is this technology going?
So as they stand, LLMs, with what they are right now, I don't personally think they're going to get any better. And in fact, I've seen them getting worse. And I think there's some reasons for that I can give. And I think really they're reaching their limits. So,
and if they're getting worse though, is that because it's been trained on worse input?
That's part of it. I think there are two reasons I see them worse at the moment. One is that they're getting trained on their own output, so the snake's eating its own tail in a way. So, a lot of what you see on the internet now is generated by large language models. And if they're going to, if they need more data and they're training on this, it's going to cause problems. And so a lot of the effort right now is going to be on trying to get higher quality data. That's the problem. Also, kind of another reason that they've become these kind of sycophants where they're trying to please you and also succumb to the kind of most popular opinion. There are some prompts, by the way, that will overcome this. Look up absolute mode on Reddit. And that causes a problem too, because it means that the answer you're getting often isn't very good. In terms of where they're going, I think if to go much beyond them, there needs to be a change in the architecture. So I actually think it's very difficult with these predictive transformers, which is a form of neural network, to really get much further. And in fact, people talk a lot about AGI, like general artificial intelligence. And really, if they're talking about being like humans, well, a lot of it is about being embedded in the environment. And also, we're not just about prediction. We know the consequences of actions because we've been there, we've made a change. This is where the causal stuff comes in. We see the result. There's a thought experiment from kind of an American philosopher called Searle in 1980. And he says, well, it's a Chinese room, he calls it. In this, there's a guy in a room, and he doesn't know Chinese, but he knows English, and he has to translate some messages that are sent under one door into Chinese and put them under another. And he has instructions for how to translate English into Chinese, and he follows them and he translates. Now, he doesn't understand what's going on again, but he's just following these instructions.
Mm-hmm. So basically, we're missing the whole human element of behavior, our cognitive behavior, our emotional reasoning as well. Which emotional reasoning, I think, is a big one, because obviously it's just black and white at the moment. It's like input equals output, with the Chinese room in the middle, so to speak. But I think in terms of like where people are at the moment, that a lot of people are quite scared because they think that, with AI agents, for instance, being able to do tasks, which for me, I can't see much of a flaw with. Like, I believe, AI agents will take a lot of the sort of the mundane intellectual work. but it's still plenty of room to be vital, to be, to be human with those kinds of jobs. But a lot of people are scared.
Yeah.
Do they have cause for concern?
I think some people do, some people don't, and I think that sometimes it's overblown and on purpose as part of the big hype that's coming along with them. But like you said before, these things are useful. I don't want to get across I don't think they're useful. I use them every day. It's just about using them for the right task, language tasks, for example, if they're language models. So I think, like you said, the main thing that they will do is speed things up and maybe take away some of the jobs that are a bit more kind of routine, where you can use that they're jobs that involve language, for example. And it just can, or maybe categorization. Like if you want to, you use text to classify something, that's fine as well. So, we use them, for example, for helping to classify if someone's in ICP, and then we go through and have a look. Things like that, I think, summarizing emails, helping you to summarize, things like that, I think they're really useful for. So it might reduce some jobs, and we've seen some companies cutting jobs. But I don't think most jobs it's going to replace. I think it's going to be an aid. It's just going to be a tool that you're using. And it's how I see them, really, including agents. I see them all as tools. And I think there should always really be a human in the loop in these things.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. I do always think there should be a human in the loop, certainly just from a fact-checking point of view, or even just to sort of make sure that this makes sense.
Yeah.
But where are people going wrong with it then? Because, like an example, I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day, and it kind of hit home a little bit. It's like if you're using ChatGPT to, try and figure out how, to get above your competition, the chances are there's probably 3 or 4 of your competitors doing exactly the same thing. Yes, they might get, mildly different results, but it's going to give them the same information pretty much. So everyone's kind of going to be put into this sea of sameness a little bit and just doing what the next man's doing. But from your opinion, where are people going wrong? Like what's the canary down the coal mine kind of, what's the sign? Like, what can you give us an example of where people might be going wrong with this, and how can they stop it?
Yeah, I think using it for decision making, really. And by this, I don't mean classifying. As I said, that's fine because that's a subset of a prediction problem. So I think using a large language model for anything that's not a language problem, because they're models of language. The reason you shouldn't use them for decision making is because for decision making, you need a model of the world. Mm-hmm. And models of language are not exactly a model of the world. So again, it's like if this person in this room say that they were in there from birth, don't feel sorry for them, they're not real. But they've never touched a table. They've never been told this is a plant. They've never seen the consequences of actions. And now they get English in and they have to send English out, but they've never connected the words to anything. It's fine if you're going to use it to process language because it works for that. But anything that requires a model of the world, it's no good for. And decision-making does that because decision-making needs attribution, right? So I take an action on this thing and it will change the outcome by this much. It's what things like marketing mix modeling tries to do.
Yeah, well, we know that problem very, very well in advertising. So,
yeah, exactly.
Well, performance marketing, yeah. But
so that's where it shouldn't be used. And, in what we're doing, for example, people ask us, well, won't it be the case that large language models will kind of take over and do what you are doing? And the answer is no, because they're models of language and we're dealing with numbers and they're very bad at numbers. And even then, it's a decision-making problem. Ours is not a problem of predicting text, basically.
So essentially, it's missing meaning.
Yeah.
So what does this decision mean for the world or mean for my world, my immediate sort of environment? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. It does miss a meaning, and in some cases it will get it right still because it's seen examples of that being right. But you have to be careful because you don't know when it's going to get it right, when it's going to get it wrong. And of course, these are generic models, these are general models, and most of the time what you want is something that's specific for your case, which is why we built something specific.
The thing is, though, there's a lot of people peddling this message of AI is going to take your job. AI's coming, the robots are coming, this, that, and the other. Is it just fear mongering? Are they just marketing fear, or is there something to what they're saying? Like, obviously we know that it might take, sort of like the sort of the less, the more mundane jobs we that require language for that. But there's a lot of chat about this. They can't all be wrong, surely, though.
No, exactly. I think that some of that is hype, and some of it is not. So I still think that for some of the more, as we say, like maybe describe them as mundane, but I think that even for those, I would personally, if I can, prefer to have a person doing them still, but and using it as a tool, but then going in and changing things. But I think it can take some of those jobs for sure. But in terms of AI taking over the world, this whole Terminator 2 kind of thing, these large language models predicting the next words from previous words, not going to do that. But you can also imagine image generation. People might be using that to create logos and things like that instead of getting in an artist who would probably, in my opinion, do a better job.
There was quite a well-known, and his name escapes me now, but he was on the Diary of a CEO a few weeks ago, and he was one of the original sort of architects of AI, and he worked for Google for 10 years as well, and they bought his business. And I can never remember his name, but we'll get it afterwards and put it in the notes. But he's incredibly worried. Like, this is a 70-odd-year-old guy, worked 10 years for Google, had to step away so that he could speak freely at a conference. This is like an original architect of AI, and even he's scared. Why?
It depends. I mean, I didn't see that, so it depends what he's scared of. If he's scared of Judgment Day, then if you go back to these Chinese room example, it's just I'm not scared of that. What I am worried about are negative effects of it. So, for example, and I say this as someone who is an educator, I'm worried that it's going to kind of take the cognitive load off people so much that they're not thinking enough for themselves and learning enough themselves.
That I think is really interesting, actually. Just the ability to think, like critical thinking. And it's something that I remember, like even people sort of a generation above me saying that my generation we were losing the ability to work hard, and it's because we had all these digital tools available. We had all this, we weren't analog anymore, we were digital. And we were, my generation specifically, like sort of millennials, we were the first generation and the last generation to go through that analog digital transition in a really, really pivotal time in our life. But yeah, the critical thinking is really interesting. So sorry, carry on.
No, I agree. So critical thinking is one of the key skills I think we were teaching at university. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to teach. But not only that, even just kind of the ability to think for yourself and as well. I think that it's very easy just to automatically ask, ChatGPT, for example, for an answer and go with that. And I think it's really it could make you have a kind of lazy thought is a worry. At the same time, I think we've got to accept people, students, for example, are going to be using these tools. And I think banning them is not the solution because it's just not going to happen, right? But we need to find ways to overcome that. And part of that is, for example, asking questions that ChatGPT can't answer properly.
Give me an example of one of those questions.
So I won't go into the detail, but there's something called game theory, which comes from economics. I taught evolutionary biology as part of my biology teaching, and you can use it to examine evolutionary outcomes. And I set a question in an exam. This is actually the last thing that I did as when I was teaching. And actually, I knew that ChatGPT would get it wrong because it's a kind of reasoning that it wouldn't be able to do because it was actually a slight variation of something that it would probably have already seen.
It was a trap question.
It was a trap for ChatGPT, but not the students because I told them not to use it for it. But of course, it was very clear that a high percentage did because it was wrong in the same way. But then a lot of them got it right as well. So I think you have to let them know if you use ChatGPT, you will get it wrong. And I think in a way, it's just we have to set better questions and more taxing things. Again, decision makings and things outside of its training.
That's interesting as well, though, because I have actually spoken to a few people in education around AI, and I've been kind of from the point of teachers, especially, like they spend so much time prepping classes and the marking work and all this kind of stuff, and they are stretched beyond belief, and there's less teachers than ever before and that kind of thing. And it's like, well, why don't you use these tools to help you alleviate time? But then I know some teachers have gone on to actually like create whole curriculums, and I think, whoa, that might be a step too far, because actually the curriculum, I mean, the education system, in my opinion, is broken anyway. But like the actual sort of like from very early age, if you're setting the curriculum from a large language model, like, the effects of that are just going to be astronomical, aren't they? They're just going to be monstrous, because you're not setting it from real world examples of, well, no one knows what the world needs, but at least you can have a pretty good go at what the world needs in terms of like students like learning about the real world, surely.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, again, it's about using it as a tool, but not using it to give you the final result. I think it's okay if you have an initial idea and you're asking. It's quite useful for kind of rubber ducking, we used to call it. So, instead of talking to your rubber duck in a bath and getting an idea out loud, you're getting this kind of feedback.
Don't think I ever spoke to my rubber duck. But I gave them names. I gave them names. I never spoke to them though. So speaking of tools, from Causa, you've actually identified an existing problem within e-commerce.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. What tool is it that you've created?
Yeah, so we decided to go from this kind of generic tool, which is still available, but to try to focus down a bit, so we knew who we were targeting, who is it for, and what exact value we can give. And using this technology, we saw the low-hanging fruit was really in e-commerce and in pricing optimization. And lots of people mean lots of different things by pricing optimization, but we can do something that's unique with it. And so we thought, actually, that's a good thing to kind of focus down on. And in fact, that's our primary focus now. We're completely doing Optifi. And so what it will do is automatically optimize to find the best prices for all your products in a store, Shopify store, across all markets to give the most profit. And that's true optimization, because I guess this is where like a lot of people use optimization to mean different things, right? And there are different types of tools that people might use for pricing, and the way it's different. So, for example, people might use dynamic pricing, this is not, where the price just goes up and down depending on demand, day of the week, stock, things like that. And it can be quite confusing for customers. It's normally used a lot more for kind of drop shipping rather than brands and things like that. And then you might also A/B test pricing, but this is where this one's slightly controversial, in that A/B testing isn't, in my opinion, optimization. Nothing wrong with it. I think it's great. But it's not optimization, because you're just testing one price versus another. And the whole idea of optimization is that you find either the maximum of something or the minimum of something. You're maximizing or minimizing. And you can't do that with something that's a hypothesis test, testing one thing versus another. It's designed for something completely different. It's actually for causal attribution. And so we wanted to design something where you leave it and it's guaranteed to find the prices that will give you the very best profit. You don't have to do these lots of tests.
So I think that's key there as well, isn't it? Because it's still making sure that the seller or the brand is still making the optimum profit for that particular product. So it's not using AI, it's not using causal AI to just go to the lowest common denominator of pricing to make sure they get the sale.
Yeah.
That's not the key objective there, is it? Like, it's making sure that they're getting the sale, but they're making a decent margin as well.
That's right. It's a trade-off between conversion rate and margin, actually, ultimately, because a lot of focus in e-com is on conversion rate, and it makes sense, because if you're dealing with anything other than price, conversion rate is normally what it is about. But with pricing, it's not. You might get more profit by dropping the price and increasing the conversion rate, you might get more profit from increasing the price and increasing the margin while the conversion rate doesn't change at all.
So your tool is taking into consideration the conversion rate as well.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So all it does is it measures the outcome, which is the profit due to the decision that you're making, which is the price. But it knows what to test next, and it will test the thing next that is the optimal thing to test next as well. So you just click go, and it will automatically learn the relationship between price and profit, and it will give you the full curve. So it learns a full curve, which looks all over the place. It's not linear. You can't just increase prices to find the best price. And it will find where the peak is, where you get the most profit, and do that automatically for all the products.
Interesting. So the ultimate benefit here for the e-commerce store owner is that they've got just something working in the background that is constantly working on price based on the amount of traffic that they're getting through. So, because that's got to be key as well, isn't it? Like the amount of traffic that's actually coming through the site in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. So we use approaches called Bayesian approaches, and it's quite different from the way people do A/B testing. It's a different way of thinking about probability, basically. But what happens is you don't need massive sample sizes like you do with an A/B test.
Right.
In fact, in the time it would take to test two prices with an A/B test, we can actually optimize and find the entire curve from using this method.
So what would be a decent sample size? Let's just say for A/B testing then. So for those people that are A/B testing but maybe not finding ultimate success, what's a good sample size for that? And then what's the sample size that Optifi, your tool, uses?
Yeah, so it depends. So I can give you a general idea, but it depends on case by case basis. Okay. So say you're testing prices, you'll want to test at least 10 prices, because you can't just test one versus another. You'll probably want to do it sequentially, because if you do them at once, you get a single p-value and it doesn't tell you which price is best.
Got it.
So you have to do them sequentially. Now, if you do them sequentially, each one is going to take tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, depends, probably hundreds of thousands of people on that product, basically. This is not purchases on that product. Ours needs about a minimum of about 100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
it's a huge difference.
It's a huge difference. It's because of the way we quantify like the level of certainty about it and things like that. So, and also borrow information from other tests, which is not going on here. And then what happens is you go to the next test, and for that you need a high number of samples too. And by the way, this needs to be calculated in advance. You have to do a power calculation, which tells you, this is how you can find out. If you go to Optimisely or something, they've got a calculator. You can find out how many you need. So you can put all of this in, and it depends on what your conversion rate is and things like that. And so, the next one needs just as many, but in fact, it needs more. The reason is, and this is a think where people who are not data scientists or have statistics training go wrong, is you have to account for multiple comparisons. If you can't just test hypothesis after hypothesis, and you certainly can't just test random stuff like a random new price.
No.
When you do that, when you're working with p-values, which is what all these A/B tests do.
Just explain what a p-value is for those people who don't know.
Okay, so the actual definition of a proper definition is, if your null is true, which is that there's no difference in the price, it's the probability that you will get a result that's as extreme or more extreme.
Okay.
So we can sort of think of it as the probability of getting the result by chance, but it is not that. That's what you want, but it's not what you get.
Yeah.
This is why I use Bayesian approaches. Really what you want to know is like, how big is the effect and how sure am I?
Yeah.
That's what we do. So that you move on to the next one. Now what you have to do is lower the threshold for it to be significant, because you've got 5% chance of, by chance, any pair of prices just saying that one is better when it's not. And now if you test 10 prices, you've got 40% chance one of those is going to say it's better when it's not. And so you have to compensate for it. If you don't do it, you'll get the wrong result. If you do it, it's going to take absolutely forever, and you probably won't ever finish it.
This is hurting my brain slightly, but I get the immediate value of this, because I think, especially at volumes, when you, I guess actually a good way of sort of like cementing where the value of this is there a certain sort of rev range, like a revenue range of business that would find this absolutely like just golden? You know, what kind of businesses are you working with, or do you want to work with this tool?
So I think any revenue range would work with this. What it works best for are brands. So not people who are kind of selling on other people's products, and mainly like if you're selling your own branded product, you don't know how much there is in the margins, basically.
Right.
And that's going to change over time too, which is why we have this autopilot, which will change and reassess what's going on. It finds the best prices and fixes it, but then it sees if there's a change and it needs to tweak it. So really brands and anything from 1 million up, basically, because it's all about having enough throughput. As long as they've got enough throughput and it can actually work, we're finding that it, on average, across a range of revenues, it's making about a 30% on average increase in profits.
30%?
Yeah.
That's massive.
It's massive.
So we're not talking about, just minuscule uplift. A third of the business, basically.
It's a massive growth lever that I think people aren't really thinking about. It's really big, especially for brands that are looking to scale. It's quite a big deal.
As a performance marketer as well, like it's one of those things because we constantly have this battle. Battle's the wrong word. This heated debate with clients, and that it becomes a challenge that we just need more traffic, or our cost per acquisition is too high. Our cost per purchase is too high, and it's like we're constantly battling the battle of traffic versus cost of acquisition, and the cost of acquisition is going up. There's no denying it, and it goes up year after year after year because of competition. But actually, if they just start to look internally, and even us as performance marketers, we look at the unit economics, we look at all of that kind of stuff. If we looked at pricing, like a sort of price-led optimization strategy, then the other two sort of throughputs, if you will, so the actual traffic and the cost of acquisition, they will almost become inconsequential a little bit because you're working on the pricing, making sure it's absolutely optimal.
Yeah. Exactly, and here we're using the word optimal to mean very best. Yeah. Which is not how it's often used, right? So exactly, and then you can start to work on other things too. But I think, and there are some obvious kind of wins that you can get on conversion rate by changing the way that checkout is and things like that, of course. And of course, those probably take a lot of priority. But really, this is where there's a really big growth lever because you don't really know what your price should be. A lot of the time, we find people are setting prices either by copying competitors if they have any, but of course you are not your competitors. People might like your brand more, might be completely different pricing, might be different pricing in different markets, or they might be doing a cost plus and you don't know how much the plus should be. And so this allows you to find out, and what we found lots of different cases. Like in some cases, some of the products that are less differentiated for one store went down in price, and so much that they decided not to stock them, but they didn't know this beforehand. Whereas what happened is some of them went massively up in price, and we're talking like 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And they decided to focus more efforts on that too. And that feeds through into the other things, because now when you're marketing, you should really focus on these ones. There's so much margin in them. And it actually changed what they were stocking, not only their pricing.
So I guess it's one of those things as well, isn't it? Where the owner is... The owner or the people who own the product within the business, they think they know their margins, and they've probably done a very sophisticated spreadsheet of this is my cost, this is what I want to be able to sell it for, this is what I will allow as a cost of sale, this, that, and the other, and profits, and then the fee to the marketing agency, this, that, and the other. Do you think more brands generally, I mean, this is probably a bit of a loaded question, you're going to be probably a little bit biased, but be as objective as you can. Do you think that more brands need to be focusing on a pricing first strategy then? Above the sort of million a year mark?
Yeah, it depends what stage they're at. Yeah, obviously at first, I think when you start out, of course, you've just got to do a cost plus, right? You look at what are your costs, all the things you said, and you've always got to consider that, and that's what Optifi considers too. But yeah, as you start to move on, and you've got you're growing, your brand's getting known, you get this customer base. Well, now you're trying to acquire new customers. Yeah, you really need to know what is your product worth, and you can't know that just by looking at your costs alone. Because we found this, and it depends country by country. I'll give you another example. We worked with a brand that was predominantly in the UK. They opened in Australia, and optimizing the prices in Australia compared to the UK meant that they sold for 3 times more again. And it's because the demand was different there. It was actually a cream for bald men, for protecting them from the sun and mattifying and so on. Of course, there's more sun in Australia and so on. So even if you think you know your prices in one country, you've no idea in the other. And I think that's an example of where, if you have a strong brand, you might have more in the margins than you think, and that might change as your brand gets stronger as well and more well known.
That's really interesting. I mean, obviously that's something we think about as marketers as well. Obviously, is like, what demographic, what region, what geography will this work in? And with product businesses specifically, the country in which you're selling makes a massive difference, because it pretty much dictates demand. I was speaking to a brand owner recently who sells sunglasses, and he makes pretty much no sales in winter. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I can see why.
It makes sense.
But so maybe look at selling into the UAE, to Australia, to America. That's where you need to be selling. So I think that gets taken for granted sometimes. Actually, it's like they're just selling into one region all the time. I mean, obviously, if it's evergreen throughout the year, then fair enough. But yeah, that's really, really interesting. So what stage of business are you at then with Optifi? Like where do you sit in the business ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think we're an early startup, I would say, really. So at the moment, we're just focusing on the initial kind of go-to-market.
Brilliant.
So we spent some time on Causa before. In a way, it was sort of a pivot to this, but it was more narrowing down and seeing where it could be most useful. So on this, we've been developing the product for maybe 7 months or something. It's come along extremely well. It's very powerful. We've got a big plan for what to do with it, but now it's more about getting it out there with even more brands. We've already demonstrated its ability to really grow brands and help them with this pricing growth lever, and we want to take it from there and keep expanding. And then one of the things we've worked on recently was expanding it to markets, like works with globally, works with Shopify markets, because of this idea that your prices are different elsewhere. So that's kind of where we're up to.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to sort of dig into that journey so far then. So, because obviously Mastering Business Growth podcast, it's people want to learn some tactics. And if they're a SaaS business, or they've got a tool and they're early stage as well, what techniques and tactics are you using at the moment to try and grow your initial user base? Because what just give me a price range in terms of what Optifi sells for on a monthly or annual basis.
Yeah, so it's a subscription service because it's an autopilot that always kind of is in the background, giving you a dashboard and seeing when the prices need to be retweaked. And so it starts at $199, and it scales with the revenue of the business. It's different from the way that people price a lot of apps in e-com, where they say that there's some nominal monthly fee, and what we do is we charge a certain percentage of the profit you make or something like that. It can be tricky to attribute that. So we've gone for something kind of simple like that. So
the thing is, it's still a considered purchase then, isn't it, really? Because £200 a month is a considerable amount actually for anybody, really. It doesn't matter. It still adds to the balance sheet. So what techniques are you using at the moment to try and grow your user base then?
Yeah, so this is where, coming into business as an academic, it was a big learning experience.
I bet.
For me. A really good one that I've enjoyed, giving me that kind of perspective I needed. And so, you get lots of advice all the way from the beginning, and you read all the books. And I think a lot of the advice maybe is based on successful businesses that either got lucky or had connections or got a load of funding, things like that. And it's very difficult for your specific startup to know what advice to listen to and what not to be listened to. And I think early on, I'd kind of listened to it all, read all the books. I think I've got to the stage where I know what to listen to and what not to. And I think one of the key things that I've learned is acting in accordance to the stage that your business is at, especially as a SaaS business. So it's very easy to fall into the trap of looking at successful businesses so e-com apps, for example, who are at the scale-up stage, doing really well, and say, they've done well, that's what I should be doing. But this is actually in causal inference, we would call this selection bias or collider bias, where you're only, it's like the aeroplane meme with the bullet holes in the wings. Basically, you're only looking at the ones who got there, and they didn't get there doing the things that they're currently doing. Yeah. And we know that because we've looked into it. We did a lot of research into this. A lot of them have got there certainly early on by direct sales. And I think that unless you're really well embedded into, say, e-com or whatever your area is, it is going to be about direct sales. And so it is going to be about a lot of cold outreach, leveraging networks and going to events. Even like a lot of these businesses I've noticed are doing cold calling as well. Things like that. And I think these direct sales, that's how we got our initial customers so far. And I think that is what you have to do quite a lot early on. When you then get to the next stage, you can start doing things like product-led growth and things like that. You don't really have a brand until then anyway. And even socials, I think. So that's what we've realized is it's a lot of that cold outreach.
Yeah, I mean, this is a lesson for me too, because I mean, even as a marketer, I've got an early stage SaaS startup as well, and I'm kind of learning. It's a learning curve for me too, because it's sort of one of those things when you get into it and it's your business and you're like trying to grow that initial user base. It's really hard. It's quite daunting, and you go like, there's so many tools and tactics around. Yeah. There's loads of great books, like the Lean Startup is one of my favorites, and it's just that race from 0 to 1. But it's really interesting what you're saying about those kind of sort of contrarian methods. Cold calling, cold email, just one-to-one selling, regardless of the monthly price. It's you want to get as close to those customers as possible, right? Yeah,
and I think things are evolving where you need to be less salesy. Like, we don't want to be salesy; it's not in us anyway. And so, just showing the benefit. So, regardless of the price, the ROI is massive. Like, for what we're doing, if we can increase your profits by 30%, you don't mind spending a little bit on it on a SaaS product. So I think like, getting that across, but doing it in a non-salesy way, because we genuinely, like, one of the reasons I moved into industry was I thought I could make a real impact, and I think that we can genuinely help people with these new methods, really. And
you're not chasing the Yankee dollar, basically. You're going in to make an impact.
Yeah, I think so, and it's very rewarding, I find, when we do that.
It's funny though, isn't it? How like your sort of career path, your how that's spanned. You've been an academic looking at machine learning, computer science, biology, even, like looking at the human aspects as well. And now you're doing something pretty much that encapsulates all of that.
That's true. And yeah, so when I was doing biology, I worked a lot with killer whales, in fact. And so
really?
it's quite a journey that I've been on. Like, so I still work with them a bit.
Just tell me more about that really quickly. Like, what were you doing with killer whales?
So yeah, I've studied those for over a decade. So we studied killer whales off the coast of kind of Seattle, British Columbia. These resident killer whales there, these fish-eating killer whales. And I was using kind of causal methods to ask questions about them, because obviously you can't do controlled experiments on them. They're protected, endangered. And so, but you want to find out about them and particularly try to conserve them. So, but we need to have causal attribution for that. So I was using these methods, and we've got machine learning, computer vision methods with drones above them and all sorts of things. Yeah.
That is super cool. That's so cool. Let's just talk about that. Let's not talk about anything else. Okay, so yeah, and you're kind of doing all of that now. So what's the next? So you've got probably less than 100 people on your tool using it now. You're still early stage startup. So what's next for you? Like, is it? How are you? What's your path to growth now? Is it just more of the same? Have you put a time limit on that? Do you know where you should be going? Like, have you got any milestones that you want to hit?
Yeah, I think we want to focus at the moment on just increase in use. So, increase in the number of users that go to market. And what we're doing is when people are using it, we're listening to what they're asking and seeing if there are kind of threads that run through that. So, some people will ask for one thing, some people will ask for another. Is there something that everyone's really wanting? One was the markets. And I think going forward is that, things like maybe stock prediction, integration with marketing mixed models, like causal marketing mixed models, because, as you said, these all interplay with each other. Increased analytics on the dashboard, but causal analytics, not just predictive. We want to have a big dashboard. So we have a big product roadmap, but right now, my main focus is I want people to start using it. And when we've got to a certain number of users, then we can start to think about partnerships is something we're quite keen on with kind of Shopify agencies and things like that. And moving on to that later on, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that makes sense from a product roadmap, because obviously Shopify agencies, they're in there with the customers, aren't they? And this is something that's going to help them, especially even with, I guess, something like what we do, performance marketing agencies. We want to be able to essentially get the most, the biggest bang for the customer's buck, so to speak. And if they've got an optimized pricing strategy, then it's just going to increase the success of it. So I can definitely see the advantages of that as well. Do you do any advisory roles with your AI stuff?
So I have one advisory role. So I'm an advisor and a board member for actually former PhD students startup. So he created a computer vision startup where he's helping in agriculture, helping farmers to detect a disease early in cocoa plants. They have all kinds of diseases that kind of ravage them, and this will go on tractors and automatically detect what's going on. It's called Fairfield Vision. And so that's one. He was a former PhD student, and in fact, my co-founder Jordan's a former PhD student as well.
Oh wow! Oh, brilliant. I guess there's that's kind of the beauty of the academic sort of environment, really, isn't it? Because they're all studying. Well, certainly in your field anyway, they're studying this, and they will probably go into what they've been studying. And you hope that they will have some kind of entrepreneurial aspect to what they're doing to help solve some problems, I guess.
Exactly. And I think you kind of hinted at it earlier when you said you think the education system's broken. I've definitely changed my perspective now, I think, on how we would teach what we would encourage them to do. And I really like the idea of encouraging this entrepreneurship, which is what I did in this case as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Like I've got a little boy in school. I know you have as well. And I'm not here to sort of slam the teachers. The teachers do an incredible job, and I think the government only makes it harder for them. Mm-hmm. And there's loads of other issues we could go into, but from an actual sort of educational standpoint, it starts at home. It starts at home. Like, do they have a yearning for learning? But it's this whole thing of like, what does the world need? We don't need office workers anymore. We don't need factory workers anymore. We still need those things, of course we do, and people will go into those things, but I think it's like trying to sort of guide children to make their own mind up, what's relevant to them now. But it's really good, because I still think there's value in university as well. I got huge value from it. Am I doing what I studied? No, but am I using elements of it? Absolutely, I am. But it's one of those things. It's like people just seeing it as just a track of like deflection, just I'll think about it later.
It's what I did.
Is it right?
What I did. I mean, when I was at school, I wasn't very academic at all.
Really?
Well, I guess I didn't really care about it. The way it was taught, it was a lot of memorization and so on. I didn't really see the real world application of it.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. We're being taught to pass exams, basically.
I think that's a big problem with the commercialization of universities as well that we're seeing. So when I went to university and I got a stipend to go, I came from a working class background, and so they paid me to go to university. And it was, and when I first became like a lecturer, It's a long time ago now, but it was very different. There was it was less kind of what's on the exam kind of thing. It was more like I felt a bit more free to teach critical thinking. I still think a lot of that goes on now, and for me, university was actually transformative. It's really what allowed me to move out of the area. And I did my undergraduate at a Polytech University in computer science, and then moved on to doing a PhD. And I think actually that was the point where I'm like, okay, now I really want to study, and it's where I learned more than I've ever learned. And then I went to work in social sciences for a while, so I was flipping all the time actually. And then I got the job in between biology and computer science, and now I've gone into industry, and I have actually been flipping quite a lot. So, but it's not always possible.
No, I've really enjoyed this. I think it's really interesting. We could literally just talk for hours about AI. I know we could, because, well, we have done in the past. But one bit of advice that you would give people growing their business, and make it relevant to where you're at the moment. So what's the one bit of advice in terms of what you're experiencing now with Optifi? What's the one best piece of advice you've either received or you've learnt, and that you think other people would find valuable?
Yeah, I think the best piece of advice that I ever received was early on from an angel investor. And, I heard it, but we didn't realize that this was the big piece of advice. And it's really simple. It's that the go-to-market is everything. I naively came into business thinking, and this is probably the academic in me, thinking we'll make a product that's way better than everything else and people will come to it. It's not the case. I think it doesn't matter how good your product is in a way. We want to make a product that's very good, but we need people to use it. The go-to-market is the first thing you should be thinking about.
Brilliant. Excellent. Professor Dan, loved that. Thanks very much for joining me on probably the hottest day of the year as well.
It is hot in here.
It's so, I'm sweating buckets, but yeah, no, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.